So how about that?
Wow, that's positive. I haven't heard anything I've literally never heard, no teacher, no one has said something like that. So
Yeah, like my father? Or
any of my parents. Yeah.
Are you my dad?
Dad, are you listening?
Welcome back to the hunt for Posey's treasure. This is episode number 10. Date of recording is July 16th, 2025. The last two episodes we brought you have been jam-packed. They were filled to the brim, overflowing with insights, and I really have been recalibrating, I think, since then. But this week we're going to go back to where it all begins, to the poem. Also have a little bit of update and research that I delivered on in terms of the Netflix documentary. But before we really dive in, I'm going to turn to the cowboy, the co-host. I know a lot of this stuff was blowing your mind. I know at the end of last episode, we kind of had a little bit of a breakthrough in terms of how you're approaching this solve, but I just got to ask, where are you at? What's going on with your solve and your world of this hunt?
Thank you for that lively introduction. I can't say I've found the treasure, I guess is where I'll start. I haven't found the checkpoint either, even though there's been quite a bit of checkpoint discussion, including from the man himself, Justin, on various social media threads. But where I'm at is that I have really dug into my theory that I had last week, where I think the poem is structured in a way that the three middle stanzas are broad, tighter, extremely tight. Essentially, the first stanza is a wider area. It's giving you some general area that is about catching fish. I think that hope surges clear and bright. I don't think hope is the emotion hope. I think hope is a much more physical thing, but it plays in both ways. I think it has to do something with hope, and then it gets tighter and tighter. I'm still trying to wrestle with that. So that's kind of where my mind's been on the poem. And then from like a physical searching perspective, I am deep in topographical maps. I have a hunch based off of a clue from maybe a clue. I can't say for certain, obviously, but I think that it has to do, if I can align two things, I may be able to find the area, basically, is where I'm at. And but yeah, no luck. Haven't found anything, but that's where I'm at. What about you?
Very good. Where I am at is certainly interested in this new theory you have. It did draw me in. It reshaped the way I considered it, and specifically made me rethink about some of his answers and just like the relationship between the clues. I think it's interesting. I like it because, to me, I also think that's something that would lend itself to, like, he could have thought of that in 2 hours, a poem that communicates things. He just kind of looked at things through a different lens, and I think that's what we need to be doing. People at this point have exhausted the traditional route, the forest fen one-to-one. Obviously, there's massive similarities, I got to imagine, between how Justin structured this versus fens, but, like, it's got to be markedly different, especially for him being a searcher, him knowing this community, how they're going to approach things. They're going to look at the old thing. They're going to dig into every little cranny. So I don't even know where I am. I'm lost. Dr. Clowns has been asking, like, where are you guys at with your solve? And I just felt lost, but I had to do something this week productive. Had to deliver on a promise to all the listeners, and that took place last night. I went on my old Apple TV, which, side note, didn't get any feedback on my rantings about Apple and Steve Jobs, so I'm just going to go ahead and chalk that up to everybody's in agreement. Their product and on their offerings and the style of the company has gone down, needs to be revived. But that said, turn on Apple TV, turn on Netflix, and I went through parts 2 and 3 and then actually circled back to part 1 to make sure no stone was unturned. I went through every scene that fit the little envelope Justin described about I'm not in the scene, but I had control over it. What could be those massive clues? So that's kind of where I have been, still just searching, clawing, feeling through the dark.
Yeah, I, again, not sure what we're doing talking about Apple, but
Those were Justin's. He did first.
okay. Well, I also I failed to mention this. I'm glad to see that you're kind of into my more like general theory about the poem. And I do also want to point out, because we talk quite a bit about like who Justin is and his, as you had mentioned, like, is it the same or is it different than Forrest Fenn's? It's probably different. Well, as we all know, Justin is a software engineer, right? And I'm not a software engineer, and I have played with code in the past for various projects. I used to work for a couple of large tech companies, so I know what code looks like, and I've worked in like VS Code and different, like, I don't even know the terms of this stuff, but essentially when you're writing code, like the way that the layout is, if you're building something, you start with like an umbrella. More so like if you're building a container, right? Like the first few stanzas you would put underneath each other is the stanza. Then you would take a break and tab in or something like that. And to build within deeper in that, you would then go to the next stanza and build out lines of code. And then to go even deeper, you would do the same. And I'm starting to really think that he wrote this in the structure of like how you would write software. You know what I'm saying?
Where have these insights been? This is like insightful as shit.
Yeah, because I'm a insightful guy and all I do is spew knowledge. So yes, I'm sharing this. And I do think that that's kind of it's creating like a funnel essentially to the point, I think, with these three stanzas. And I'm not exactly sure what that's called. It may be called like scaffolding or like the orchestration of the software, but it's something like that. And I think that's why I can't get past this. I keep thinking that he structured it this way.
Wow. Well, you spew a lot of things. Insight, I guess, somewhere among them. Well, time will have to tell, though. But again, I like it. I'm onto it. It's reshaping. I'm recalibrating.
Reprogramming, maybe.
Recoding. I don't know anything about code. I can barely read or write, so I'll leave that domain to you. But to circle back to kind of the feedback and takeaways from our last two episodes. Firstly, we just got tremendous feedback and engagement from all y'all, our listeners. So thank you to everyone who did that, shared their thoughts. Some were arguments, some were conflicting, opinions, but some good insights. Firstly, to circle back, we talked about the cipher or the technical clue being a nod to the container. And the theory we had shared with us was that they deciphered the book in a way using numbers from the safe combination that Justin enters on Netflix. They then converted that in a way to find a technical clue, which I guess spelled out rainbow, which then as a nod to the container meant rainbow trout. So there's a lot to unpack here. Firstly, Justin is on record stating, actually, that yes, the technical clue is a nod to the container. So that wasn't like a leap that people made. Justin has established that as a ground rule. So that said, I think that's fair.
Okay, that's fair.
But I went back and watched the Calazar's episode, not the entire episode, but I went back and watched how they came to this conclusion with this technical clue and got to the word rainbow. So shout to Ben Solo 7000 on YouTube, who actually linked the Calazar's video that went into this. I rewatched it. No disrespect to these folks, Calazar's. I don't know if it's one person or that's their group, but I was not sold on the methodology that they laid out for how this was reached. To give you the gist, I know I shared it with you, Cowboy, but you listeners, for those who are uninformed, the way that this kind of, how did they get to the word rainbow from the technical clue? What is the solve? The way that worked was basically you took the clock times from Netflix, and the idea was that the hour hand would refer to a chapter in the book, and then the minute hand would be which letter on that page. Okay, so that to me, that's a bit of a stretch. But then the part where they totally lost me is even following this methodology, it's spelled out RABIONW. They then unscrambled that or whatever to get rainbow. So to me, like, there's just way too many leaps. I am in the camp of no, I disagree. I'm not sold. That does not compel me as a legitimate explanation for this technical clue cipher, whatever you want to call it. Where are you at, Cowboy?
Yeah, I agree with you hearing that explanation. I think it's like a classic example in this goose chase that you want something to work, so you force something to work, when in reality, it's a huge stretch. And it's what is it, Occam's razor? Like the most likely outcome is, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? It's that thing where it's like, You're trying to excuse my language. You're trying to force this thing, and it definitely, you're putting a square in a round hole, and we all see it. I don't know. I agree with you a bit on that. I do.
Yeah, and in fairness, we had some other folks respond in the comments. We had JMac636 said, even Calazars has now said that they might have got ahead of themselves on the container being a rainbow trout. One or more of the clock times were excluded to get the scrambled letters. I doubt that's the clue itself. So yeah, the more you kind of poke holes in this, I'm with you. People are really desperate to find who's the guy that solved this that Justin's alluding to. But in my book, we haven't found that yet. So we got to keep searching. I need more compelling options.
Yeah, I agree. Also, good for them for doing the work. This isn't throwing shade on their work. It's good work. It's worthy work, but it's also worth pointing out that it may not be accurate. But, if they want to talk about our work, that would be cool. We could go back and forth, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I know there's kind of like a community of folks out there.
I guess we're not in that yet. I guess we're not there. I mean, if they want to talk about my concept of like the hierarchical structure or this top-down design to the poem, by all means, please, just credit me, of course.
Yeah, and if they want to talk about, stuff, I could help with that.
Yeah, whatever you think or you talk about, they could also talk about that. That would be, I'm sure, super valuable.
Yeah, and I think there's actually an in-person, conference in Vegas about treasure hunting, so I plan on being out there if possible, maybe doing some live pod, then maybe we can get embedded into this community. Right now we're on the fringes, but I hope we're making noise. I got to imagine some people have been hearing about us, right?
Yeah. Vegas, huh? I bring a jacket this time of year. Here, it's chilly.
All right. Well, then to move on to some other feedback, some folks responding to the idea of Justin's claims that, when you find it, you're going to know with certainty. You can plan how you're going to extract it. We had an individual, Missouri_Dave, said, this is not a boots on the ground hunt, in my opinion. I do believe that there is a treasure that Justin has put somewhere, but the clues, the book and the poem, lead to a solve, and the solve will take you to an exact location. This is why you will have time to retrieve it. No one will be looking in that area. Once you solve it, then you go. That's his theory, and I think it's kind of in conflict with Justin said. A fair amount can be solved from home, but he does say you have to get boots on the ground. What are your thoughts that this is not even, you can solve this from home?
Again, since I haven't solved it, I don't actually know. But my assumption is that, again, as the man himself has said, it's you can get very far along and you can get the idea of it. But I think at some point you have to get boots on the ground. We also, what were we talking about last week? We were saying how Justin, there was a very interesting question in which he said, and I don't think it was quite around the 18-wheeler parking or whatever, but the idea was that when you find the checkpoint will tell you exactly where it is. He essentially said, once you find the checkpoint, you are then retrieving, not searching, right? So I think that this kind of plays into that, where I maybe you can, I don't know, we're splitting hairs here, but it's maybe you could, in a digital perspective, figure out where the checkpoint is, and then you're retrieving, so maybe there isn't any boots on the ground searching, but at some point you have to go get it, I don't know. I think that's kind of I'm just gonna listen to Justin, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I got to imagine that, I don't know though. I don't know. It's interesting, because I do think some of his answers from the Q&A alluded to this, but I do think going further and taking into account the breadth of everything he says is in conflict with that idea. So I appreciate the sentiment. I don't know if I'm convinced of that yet, but again, we love this feedback. We love these differing opinions, perspectives. And finally, I'm just going to give a thank you to Marie, Jose, N4I for saying thank you guys. I think you are helpful. Wow. Cool. And then we also had James Golden say, very entertaining. I enjoy your thought processes. Keep it up. So how about that?
Wow, that's positive. I haven't heard anything I've literally never heard, no teacher, no one has said something like that. So
yeah, my father? Or...
Yeah, any of my parents? Yeah.
Are you my dad?
Dad? Are you listening?
But that's really it. I think those were the big feedbacks. So in my mind, technical clue, Justin has said it has been solved by someone online, but my contention is we don't know that yet. If it's out there, other ideas, share them with us. Additionally, now you've reframed, maybe this isn't just a 1 point to 1 point solution, which the whole question that I think triggered you on that was, what was he asked? Because of the nature of like how this was structured, I can't answer that question. Is that right? Is that really what spurred this, or what's kind of what was triggered that mindset shift in your mind?
I'm trying to recall. I don't know. I think it was an answer that he gave in the Q&A when he was answering something about the clues, right? And he was like, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm going to try to remember, but he said something along the lines of he said something like, it's not 1 point to 1 point. He's like, it's hard to, I can't answer that question. Like, it's impossible for me to answer that question because the question was based off of a step-by-step interpretation of the poem, right? And he said it's impossible to answer. So that's where my mind went, well, if it's impossible for him to answer that, it can't be a step-by-step. And then that's where I started going down the rabbit hole of like, well, maybe it's more general. And then as I read this, as hope surges clear and bright, walk near water's silent flight, round the bend, past the hole, I wait for you to cast your pole. That clearly is a fishing area. To me, it's like he's talking about fishing, like the hope in fishing, and like it's the idea of this area. And that's the hard part is like, well, where the hell is that? Who knows? But then it goes a much more detailed, and Ursa eats his realm awaits, his bride sends guard at ancient gates. Yeah. Starting to get more, and then you get into this, her foot of 3 at 20 degree, and I still believe that there's some kind of like physical component to that. I don't know what it is. And then so you're getting deeper, and then it's like the double arcs on Granite Bold where Secrets of the Past. And I think that's like you are now standing in a place where you can see this, and it's like we're here. Then I personally believe this leads you to the checkpoint. I think that these 3 stanzas brings you right to the checkpoint, and once you're there and you see it and you're like, oh shit, okay, this is the checkpoint, and then you go to whatever that is. Maybe it's a detail that gives you coordinate. I don't know what actually it is, but then you find that there, and then, as he said, you're retrieving at that point. You've already done the mission. You found the checkpoint. Now go get it. That's what I think this would be, and I'm trying to figure out which. I'm still at stanza 1, or that first as hope surges. Like, where is that?
Well, that's where we're all at. I don't know if we're all at, but that said, to refresh what the actual Q&A was you were referring to, I've pulled it up. It said, the question was, how far is it from the first clue to the last one in miles? And his answer was, this is actually not possible to answer, and I'm not being coy. Based on how the clues are structured, I think it's the wrong question to ask.
Yep, and that's why I believe it's a hierarchical structure like you would do in coding, writing code, where you go general, more specific, and then the final bit. I think that's how it's structured.
I'm with you, but as I was going through it, something I felt like, oh, is that in conflict? But as I reread it, I do think it still lines up, because the other question he asked, specific to distances, he did give a definitive answer. They asked, is it walking distance from water's silent flight to round the bend and past the hole? And he said, boy, I'm not sure if I want to answer this. But then he said, yes, I think that's fair. And I do think, because this is such a granular part and specific part of the stanza, he's able to answer this like, okay, these are 2 physical distances, but in terms of like the poem itself, that gets too messy. Do you square these 2 things together, or does that throw a wrinkle or a curveball?
No, it makes sense, because he can't answer like from a mileage perspective. But in a broader perspective, can you walk it? I mean, dude, I could walk to Denver, Colorado right now if I really wanted to. Like, it's not finite. Like, the amount of distance someone can walk is subjective. So I think that it makes sense. Like, you can walk from this, and I think it does embolden the theory that it's like you're starting wide and getting narrower and narrower. It's a top-down structure. Yeah.
All right. Well, the next part we're going to dive into, I don't know is going to be that helpful, but you'll have to head over to our Blue Sky account. We are on Blue Sky at Posey's Treasure Hunt.bsky.social is our official handle on there. I think I've only done 1 or 2 tweets, but the fact that this is so visual, I apologize if you're lost here, those listening on the pod, but I wanted to revisit what I said, my research I did about the still frames that fit the bill. Now, the top level takeaway is nothing stood out except which I don't know. Do we want to like reveal our hand here on what we think is the main clue, or do we want to keep that to ourselves while you continue to do your research, Cowboy?
I think I'm going to continue to do the research. I've put so much time into this. I need to see it through.
So we're going to be a little tease. I'm not going to reveal. We will at a later time what we believe. We believe from the beginning we have found what is going to be a significant clue purposely put in the doc that Justin has alluded to. But we're going to hold on to that for now. But the ones that I saw outside of that were there's a shot of Tucker laying on the floor. This one technically might not even count because you can actually see Justin, it looks like in the background, his feet. He's seated in his chair. So nothing really to draw from that. There's another shot where Tucker's on the couch and they reference to him and they do a quick cutaway to Tucker. There's a cutaway showing Justin typing into his email to email Forrest Fenn. Forrest's email was forrestfenn@gmail.com. There's 9 Mile Hole yellow ST shown. That's really all I could take from that. Then the other shot, there's a cutaway of his notebook, which is in one of his possessions, and there is a little pamphlet underneath for Warrenton Lakes, but I believe those are in Canada, so I don't know what you draw from that. Then the next few were done as B-roll when he's narrating about his brother committing suicide, so I gotta imagine these aren't going to be significant clues, but they're in there. There's a shot of a notepad on a desk. Basically, I think the directors and them did that. I don't even think Justin controlled that. Then there's a photo of Brandon's gear that they discovered in trying to track him down. And then beyond that is really just like gold shots of the gold, Forrest Fenn's treasure, as Justin is staging it. And specifically, though, there is one shot where you see some gold bars stacked up next to each other, and you can clearly see the numbers 0523, and then below that 0542. But again, these are gold bars. Those numbers were imprinted, not by Justin's control, but maybe by some grace of, miracles, he was able to show them in a way that was meaningful. I don't know, man. And then there's a shot of his safe where he has a bunch of this stuff stacked up. There's some tags that have numbers on them. Then the biggest one but this is the thing, everyone's talked about this photo, is the photo of his grandfather. There's a nugget of quartz sitting next to a framed photo of Justin's grandfather. But then in the foreground, I realized there's like a Raspberry Pi miniature computer that's taken apart. So at this point, I know you've seen the photos. None of these kind of lit a fire under you, did they?
Well, I do want to point out, because I didn't look this up until you'd said it, the Waterton Lake, which you said was in Canada, actually descends south into North Montana. Which is something fascinating. It's in the very, very top of Montana. It's pretty central in the state as I'm looking at the map. Actually, it's kind of... See, I don't know, my geography's not so good, but yeah, it's very close to and it's very close to the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. Now I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But yeah, it is in the United States. Something to look into actually now that I'm realizing that's definitely a bit of gold possibly. And there's the Waterton Rivers, there's Rainbow Falls, which is right below the lake. Just throwing that out there. I know we kind of passed on the rainbow concept, but Rainbow Falls. It's about 200. Oh no, those are meters. Wow, it's very close to Waterton Lake. Very, very close. But yes, and there's some crazy mountains up here. This is a...
Well, did you spell it? I think it, because I probably pronounced it wrong. I think it's spelled like WHARL.
No, I'm looking at it. It's Waterton Lake.
You're right. It is Waterton.
It says it's in southern Alberta, Canada, but it also does fall into northern Montana. And the bit of lake that is in northern Montana is called the Upper Waterton Lake. So, something to think about.
Okay. So then there was maybe, but yeah, beyond that, nothing tickled my fancy. Then there is a photo of a photo. Which, does that count? Does that count as Justin being filmed but having control? I don't know, but it does look like to me a sacred place. It's Justin, it's Tucker. They're standing at the top of a mountain overlooking like this gorgeous space. There's a river running down below. I don't know. And then moving on beyond that, there's still frames of photographs he's provided, a few of which are in the book. One of them is his grandfather surveying some land with binoculars. Another one, it looks like it's him and his father on a river with a canoe. And then another one is him, his father, his grandfather, and his brother on the shore of a river. None of these seem that distinguishable in terms of locations. And then they have old B-roll footage of Justin growing up, which I guess that doesn't count, but does it? And he's holding up 2 books in one of them. One of them was The Dutchman's Gold, and one of them is about another tombstone gold. And then finally, the last one I could find was they show him doing like an internet search or a web browser, and it's just stories about people that died or got hurt trying to find Forrest's treasure. But our friend Clowns also shared some photos, but several of which I know from seeing them, like there was a photo book of Fenn's book, but Justin's hands are flipping the page, so to me that doesn't count. Justin driving his car, I feel like that counts as him being in the shot, but maybe not. But yeah, a lot of it is just kind of still shots of cutaways. It's really all just cutaways and B-roll, man.
Yeah, man, I'm looking at this Upper Waterton Lake. It's so far north in Montana, you have to imagine the snowpack there is like tens of feet in the winter, right? It's got to be insane. Like, and it does make you think if he had a container, like, I guess it just gets buried. It just gets buried. And maybe that's, I don't know, maybe now I'm stretching it, but maybe that's why he's doing this push right now in the summertime to get people interested, because he knows in a couple of months it's going to be virtually impossible for 6 to 8 months for people to look for it. I don't know.
I was really hoping, I mean, based off Justin's words, like, it's so obvious. You go back and look at it. Nothing stuck out. And then I was thinking, like, oh, maybe it's something he said, but then he said, I'm not in the scene, but I had control over it. So, I don't know. I'm with everyone else. I'm missing it. If y'all have any theories on this, that's the other thing is, like, he said nobody's talking about it either, and I've heard tons of people talking about the photograph of the grandpa so it's like, that's been discussed. I gotta imagine that's not it. But then that leaves ours, which is the one I will not describe. I'm gonna hold it close to the chest. There is another shot in this doc that fits that bill, and I think it's striking in terms of how it could be potentially a clue. You do as well. You're digging. We're still digging. We will bring you that information here to come, but that is kind of where we left off, where we've been since last week. My my plan for the rest of this episode is to kind of just start looking at the poem line by line, see where we can get in the next 20 minutes, and then continue on next episode. But it's like, I think we're ready to do that. It's been on my list as an episode or episodes to do from the start. So any final thoughts, or where do you want to go?
Oh, I don't know. I could go anywhere. I'm a feather in the wind, baby. Take me. I don't know.
All right. Well, we're going to take you to Beyond the Map's Edge, the aforementioned poem that we've excruciatingly been agonizing over, all of us here, trying to find a treasure, a poem that was written in a few hours, but still can't be unlocked. So let's just dive in. I want to go one line at a time. Obviously, the opening line, can you find what lives in time? The very first thing that struck me with this line, first place my mind went to, was music or rhythm or lyrics. The idea, I just envisioned a measure on a piece of sheet music, and I felt like everything on that measure lives in time. That was my first takeaway where I came to. What are you potential meanings of that opening line?
Well, that's what we originally talked about months ago when we first kind of followed this. It was, can you find what lives in time? We both kind of were thinking music. We then went down that rabbit hole of trying to like build some kind of pattern out of syllable. It was like a whole thing we tried to do with this.
Yeah.
I personally think that first stanza. Are we going just first line? We're going line by line.
I guess, though, we should do the full stanza. So, or couplet, excuse me.
Is that what it is? It's called a couplet?
Yeah, it's a rhyming couplet.
A rhyming couplet. Yeah, this first rhyming couplet, I think it's a setup, personally. I don't think there's anything in this that gives, like, any concrete evidence about anything, personally.
Really?
I think again, like, I don't mean to be dismissive, but I am kind of in this zone where I think that, and Justin has said so himself, that the clues or whatever start after this first rhyming couplet, right?
Actionable items, yes.
Actionable
but I do think
items.
this first stanza has significance in terms of meaning. But then, so since then, the music thing flowing through each measured rhyme, like, obviously that's lines up pretty literally. But then as I started digging a little more, and especially when I saw that chunk of granite is or not granite, excuse me, quartz, it could be quartz. Quartz has natural, it's like the way the frequencies are very consistent, so they use it in making watches and timekeeping apparatuses for this reason. So literally, if you have a watch, it may be quartz in that little thing. It's living in time, is it not?
Yeah, okay, but like, what are you looking for, like quartz mines or something, or quartz areas?
I mean, yeah, maybe areas of quartz. Or the other thing I'd gotten to at one point, which was wild, was like if you took a really 1,000-foot view, it was like each stanza could be a different kind of rock. It was like, or materials like gold and quartz. Anyways, so those are the two, though. It was either music. I mean, but then memories is the obvious one. Memories, I think, is the one we all come to. That's the most generic one, and the whole book is tied to significant things in his life. So those are the three on my potential list.
Yes, that makes sense. I honestly am so much more curious about the next couplet, you said it was? Rhyming couplet?
Yeah, wisdom waits in shadowed sight for those who read these words just right.
Oh, no, I thought, okay. So the rhyming couplet is 2 lines.
A couplet, for your edification, is defined as 2 lines of verse, usually in the same meter and joined by a rhyme.
Okay, is a stanza then 4?
The stanza is like a paragraph. It is like the...
God, okay.
Section
you didn't really clarify that for me, so sorry. I'm more interested in the second stanza, the second couplet we can go to, though, if you'd like to.
Yes, but wisdom waits in shadowed sight for those who read these words just right. Obviously, shadowed sight is that's the big wrinkle in that line. Some people I saw, which was interesting, they were like, well, like fish don't see really well. The other, when I think about shadowed sight, I think about like having your eyes closed. Or like in darkness.
Well, yeah. So like the shadowed sight thing, like, so wisdom is kind of like the key word. Wisdom, yeah, like a trout. Typically, they hang in like the shade under a tree in like a stream or a river, right? Like they're kind of waiting before they like rush out and go to eat something. So they're kind of just like chilling in like these pockets of like in like the shadows. So like wisdom could be a reference to like these fish or something like that if you really want to go down that fish rabbit hole. The other really fascinating thing I found about wisdom is that when I was deep on the Lewis and Clark adventure that I went on, I believe it was Big Hole River or it was Madison. It was one of the rivers in that area in Montana. They had named that Big Hole River in the journals of Lewis and Clark. I think it was Lewis's journal. It was Lewis's journal. They had named this river that they had gone across as Big Hole River or whatever. Well, that period came and went, and like several decades later, other settlers had gone there. And they were sailing along this river, and they didn't know that Lewis had already named the river. It wasn't like, they couldn't Google it. And they had named that same river Wisdom. It was the Wisdom River. And that was one of the 3 in the Three Forks rivers in Montana. Maybe it was the Madison River. I can't really remember.
That's super compelling. I do think we need to revisit that. But didn't you also say there's a creek, Wisdom Creek?
There's several Wisdom Creeks in Montana. Yeah.
Several.
Yeah, there's a lot of creeks in Montana.
Yeah, so when it comes to that second couplet, that one to me is a total mystery. I think of all the couplets in the frickin' poem, like that one I don't think I've seen many like solutions for or meaning. So that one's kind of a question mark in my mind. What we've come up with so far is potentially relating to fish or the Big Hole River's former name or a river or monument named Wisdom. So then let's move on to the second stanza, first couplet. As hope surges clear and bright, walk near waters, silent flight. I'll turn it over to you, sir, since you were eager for this one.
I think that we talk about walk near waters, silent flight. I think that has to do personally, I wouldn't be surprised if it has to do with the prehistoric seabed that has risen. That water's silent flight. I think that you'd want, this is my idea, you would want to focus in on areas of Montana that have prehistoric seabeds that have risen over time due to continental shifting. I think that's what that is referring to, personally. I could be so wrong. That's just what I think.
I am more thought about it literally of like, okay, what could be considered the silent flight? Flight either meaning going airborne, or flight can also just mean to flee an area, to leave. So the first, for the latter, was an underground river. They're very common, and early on in this pod, for those who know me, I was very focused on Arizona. There's actually quite a bit of underground waterways in Arizona. So that kind of drew me to that. But then it was also like, or a dry river bed.
Yeah.
Because the water has silently fled. That also lined up with one of the clues or potential clues from the Netflix docs we've talked about ad nauseum, the photos on Justin's computers. I believe one of the photos, it's on the left monitor, it shows a river that's just overflowing. Well, apparently that river is in Arizona, but it rarely flows. The majority of the time, it is a dry river bed. So those connections were like kind of sparking in my mind. But then as I stepped back and thought about it more, it's like water silent flight. And I'm like, well, literally speaking, that would be evaporation. You leave a cup of water outside, it is going to silently take flight into the atmosphere via evaporation. But then I'm like, I guess that just brings us back to dry bed, or I don't know. So I'm kind of into this whole, though, like riverbed thing. Because he says walk near waters, silent flight.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's like a general area. It's getting you closer.
So I do think water silent flight, we could say, is a noun. It is an objective person, place, or thing. Not, you know what I mean? Just because there is that preposition of like near, or adjective, excuse me. Like that is a physical relationship in my mind.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But what about hope surges clear and bright? Did I misspeak? Was it actually not the Wisdom Creek? It was the Hope Creek? Or there's just creeks called all sorts of stuff?
There's I believe there's 2 Hope Creeks in Montana. And that's another thing. Is like, is he literally talking about a creek or river named Hope surging? Like, is Hope the name of a river? Like, as this river surges clear and bright, walk near water, silent flight. Because you could also interpret walk near water, silent flight as like when water is just going downstream and there's not rocks or like any kind of like, rapids or anything. It is silent, right? The water literally just moves silently. And it could just be a reference to like just literally water passing by in a stream.
A super still flow of water. I thought about that, or like a drip or something very quiet. But I like what you just did there, which you didn't probably realize it, is you restated the line, but with the new interpretation. I think that is a valuable thing to do, to kind of re-look at some of these. And so with that in mind, it's like walk near waters, silent flight, like walk near the riverbed. To me, that lines up, you know what I mean? But then to go back, so as hope surges clear and bright, I'm so torn, because on one hand, I'm like, yeah, man, it's this river. He's referring to hope surging. This surging clear and bright is clearly referring to some sort of moving body of water. But then that's kind of in direct conflict to our interpretation that it could be a dry riverbed. Do you see what I mean, or no?
Well, I think another way to interpret it is that when you're going fishing, like if like kind of the ethos of the beginning of this is like when you're gonna go fishing and you're going to do the act of fishing and you're going on this trip to do it, he may be physically talking about the emotion hope, like as your hope surges clear and bright, which may not have any direct relationship to any geographical location whatsoever. And then it could be that walk near water, silent flight. I mean, it could be interpreted in a way that this is just, he's just saying this emotionally, which is setting up the next couplet, which is, I think could be, which we'll get to, maybe we move to that now, but the round the bend, past the hole, I wait for you to catch your pole. Round the bend, past the hole, those two things could be very much like if we're taking this as a general overview, maybe he's specifically talking about a bend and past the hole. And he does capitalize hole, which is something that like obviously stands out in this. That's why a lot of people are kind of eyeing in on Big Hole River, right? Like that's kind of what people are thinking. And it all kind of feels like that as well to me. And maybe this stanza is saying like, look at the fishing areas in this area, round the bend, past the hole. That's the general area,
Yeah, when I said I'm torn on that line, that was the second interpretation. Like one is you interpret it kind of literally as its physical directions relating to a physical place, as hope surges clear and bright. Like I said, the one interpretation is like a body of water or whatever. But then the other is, like you said, it's just purely symbolic and emotional line of like, as your hope surges because you're starting out on your quest to find my treasure, like that's AKA step one when you're on your journey. This is what you're going to need to do. So I don't know if I have a definitive takeaway there. And then the waters is pluralized with the possessive apostrophe. So the literal definition of what he said is you are walking in close proximity to the silent flight of multiple waters, not like a single thing of water. I think that's important too, the fact that it's pluralized.
That's interesting. That makes me think of like three forks or multiple streams of water coming together. Yeah,
because if it was one, it would have been WATER apostrophe S, but it is WATERS apostrophe, which means it is a possessive in the plural form.
Yeah, that is interesting. Ooh. Now I gotta. Okay, you keep going. I'm gonna Google a couple things.
Well, while you marinate on that, yeah, I'm gonna go to the second couplet, second stanza. Round the bend, past the hole, PAST, hole being capitalized. I wait for you to cast your pole. Now, one point of contention people have is how you interpret round the bend, past the hole. Does that mean the bend is like part of the hole? Or is it two separate steps where you round the bend and then a little bit of a ways later, then you go past the hole? Or are you rounding the bend that's part of the hole? You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean. I never thought about it like that detailed. Again, I believe that this is more general. It's like there is something probably in this area named the bend. There's something that could be referred to as the hole, and that's the general area. That's what I think.
Yeah, but the capitalization, no doubt, massively significant. Go through the entire poem. There is no single word in the middle of a sentence that is capitalized aside from whole. Not one. So clearly massive significance. And in the Fenn poem, House of Brown was capitalized. Brown trout being a proper noun, being a very specific noun, not just a generic thing. To me, same thing. Whole, not just any sort of fishing hole. It is something, it is a proper noun, it is an established name. Obviously, Big Hole River being the most popular, but I don't know if he's going to be that on the nose. I just feel like that to me is going to be a big unlock when you can find an alternative that has the word hole in it that could be significant enough to like line up all this stuff.
The Big Hole River, a tributary of the Jefferson River, which is a river that's part of Three Forks, in southwestern Montana, is approximately 153 meters long. Its source is Skinner Lake in the Beaverhead National Forest, Beaverhead Mountain, and Bitter Range. The rivers flow north and northwest, passing Wisdom, before turning northeast near Glen, Montana.
Interesting. I mean, yeah, I think the two themes that are like clear as day are two kind of calling cards of where this thing is it's related to water and it's related to fishing. Because then we go to, I wait for you to cast your pole. I'm sorry, but if that is not referring to something with fishing, then he is full of shit when he said there's no intentional red herrings. Like, how that's the one line where I'm like, I don't know how else you could interpret this any other way, but I'm open to it. You got anything else? Any other spins on that line? I wait for you to cast your pole.
No, I think he's literally trying to dig into the fishing component.
And we talked about shadowed sight. You said the fish are kind of waiting there. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's about halfway through the poem, but that is pretty much going to be the full way through this episode because I don't want to dive in and explode my brain anymore. I also want to hear some feedback from y'all. Any interpretations or meanings behind any of these first two stanzas that we didn't touch on, or holes to poke in, or like theories. I do think you threw out some names that I jotted down, or locations that I think are worth exploring. What was it? Blackfeet? What was near Waterton Lake? It was Blackfeet Creek.
Blackfeet Indian Reservation?
Is that what it was? I don't know. Something stood out there. Rainbow Falls, these creeks that are named Hope, and the Wisdom River. That's where I think we need to be exploring in the meantime. But next week, we're going to go through the rest of the poem. Obviously, take any feedback we get in the meantime. But where are you at? Anything you want to get off your chest or dig into before we sign off here?
No, I'm still on my own little mission.
And in terms of these topographical maps, like what's the approach there?
It's literally trying to find the numbers and line it up in some kind of pattern, because I have one thing that I think is something, and I'm just looking at maps trying to figure out if that is, am I looking at the right thing? It's exhausting.
Well, folks, as we alluded to, we're working off of a piece of evidence or scene from the documentary, which we feel fits Justin's description of he was not in it, but he had control over it, although I think you could argue he was in it because I think he might be in the scene, just not visible. But if you're all out there on like the Calazars, these big pods, you get us onto your platform, yeah, I think we'll reveal the mystery there. But until then, we're going to keep digging because we will bring in we'll have a breakthrough on the show at some point. I know it. Right?
Yeah, definitely, buddy. Definitely.
Don't tell me you're losing hope.
I'm not. I'm fully committed to finding this.
Fully torqued, fully committed. Good. Yeah, dude. I mean, I think we're starting to finally get into this thing where it's like, I don't know, man. I think we got a ticket to Montana at some point in our future, though, this year. That's how I'm feeling.
I agree.
Well, thank you all for taking the ticket to our podcast this week. Yes, we are the Hunt for Posey's Treasure. If you have just discovered us, thank you so much for joining. If you've been with us from the beginning or early on, thank you so much for sticking with us. As you've heard, might sound like total bumbling buffoons, but we got some little nuggets we'll drop for you here and there, I hope.
We're definitely buffoons. We're definitely buffoons. Well, you are.
Okay. But that said, that is going to do it for us this week on the Hunt for Posey's Treasure. We dove into the Q&A answers. We've really explored all the public information that Justin has released up to this point. Now we're starting to dive into this poem, dissect it, look at solutions. Where we go from here is anyone's guess. We're open to feedback. What do you want us to talk about or explore? Are there any things we haven't even touched on that you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a big overlooked thing? Let us know. I also plan to go through kind of the subreddit, look at some of the most popular solves, break them down, explore where they went wrong or theories like that. I know a lot of people are exploring the Big Hole River, but no one's found this thing, so I don't know if that's the hole. That's kind of where I'm starting to like cool away from that as that being the hole because it's just so obvious to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's a very vast area, it's not like, and it's a tiny little treasure, so you never know.
Indeed. Big world, small treasure, we're finding it, slowly honing in on it. Maybe it's a linear path, maybe it's more of a funnel, I think you called it, I like that. Only time will tell, but until next time, we're going to continue searching. We hope you'll do the same. Happy hunting, my friends.
Stay safe.